The Big 12, Brett Yormark, held his press conference after the Big 12 meetings took place in West Virginia this past week. And the big takeaways to me, if you want the big takeaways, something's going to happen on the expansion front, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Brett Yormark said that we've got a plan, and that plan is going to be implemented. And that plan is something that he is dead set on making happen. And by the way, the other thing that I took out of it is that basketball is a huge part of what he wants to do going forward. And we've told you about that here on the show. I'm just pulling up some of his quotes here on my phone. But when he talked about the Big 12 and when he talked about expansion for the Big 12, he talked about, yes, academic alignment, leadership, cultural fit, geography, athletic performance, and the upside. But it's clear that Brett Yormark sees a way where basketball eventually becomes its own decoupling from football. What does that mean? That means when you sell the TV rights for the Big 12 in 2031, when the next contract comes up, what he sees, what his vision is that the Big 12 could say, hey, we're going to sell our football rights, and then we're going to sell our basketball rights, and we're going to decouple them and do it separately. He thinks that college athletics for too long has thrown in basketball as basically an add-on to football. And he doesn't believe that that's maximizing every dollar for the league. And he sees the Big 12 as the preeminent basketball conference in the country. And he's not wrong. He's right to have that opinion. But the way he talked about decoupling basketball from football, he said it here. He said, quote, as we think about the future and the ways to create value, there's always that option to decouple basketball from football to see if there is further value we can create for our conference. And we positioned ourselves to do so. That is part of what Brett Yormark said in his press conference on Friday. And then he added this about expansion. We had a great discussion about expansion, and we have a plan. We have an appetite to be a national conference. We believe in the upside of basketball. If the opportunity presents itself to create value, we will pursue expansion. It is a focus of ours. So we've all talked about the idea of Colorado and maybe another Pac-12 team coming into the fold for the Big 12. But when he hints at the upside of basketball there, what does that mean? When he hints at the upside of basketball, that tells me that UConn may be more in the mix than we realize. Or a Gonzaga for basketball only could be more in the mix than we realize. We've talked about, is it going to be Colorado and Arizona? Who could it be, right? That's been the comment, too, from the Pac-12. But the more we look at this, the Arizona schools, they may have so much interest in staying together, one is afraid to leave the other. And if only Colorado leaves, then suddenly that brings them into the mix back in the Big 12. And the Pac-12 could basically flip San Diego State, replace Colorado at San Diego State, and wipe their hands clean and say we're still a solid 10-team conference. They may ultimately do that. And then the Big 12 could say we've got, let's say, Colorado and then UConn. Brett Yormark is a basketball guy. He desperately wants to be a part of the New York City market. We know that. He's made that very clear. Brett Yormark had a dream spring. He had a dream March Madness, right? With K-State making that run in Madison Square Garden, pushing to the Elite Eight, almost getting to a Final Four on the backs of three guys who all were from New York City. And then they had the announcement about Harlem, where they're going to be doing summer camps in Harlem for Big 12 coaches, men's and women's basketball teams. Like, Brett Yormark wants to tap into that market. His best bet right now is UConn. The question is, does UConn want it? Would they come in for football too? Does that potentially hurt the basketball brand in some way? I don't have all those answers, but I know that those conversations are absolutely taking place. There's no doubt in my mind that they're taking place. And he keeps hinting at this, saying national conference, right? Saying basketball upside, decoupling basketball. And if he thinks he can decouple basketball, then he's got to add some basketball powerhouses, and UConn is one that makes all the sense in the world. What I don't know, and here's what's worth following and worth watching. Based on all the reporting, if the Big 12 adds a Power 5 school, the TV contract will equally pay that school what the other Big 12 schools are getting. So if Colorado comes in, it clicks in where Colorado gets the same money, about $31 million at the base level of all the other Big 12 schools. ESPN and Fox will kick that in. I don't know what UConn is considered. They play Big East basketball. Big East is basketball-only schools, right? Or, basketball-first schools, I should say. And the football's independent, but, I don't know. I assume that does not qualify as Power 5, so then how do you do that? How does that work when it comes to the contractual side? And those are the questions that UConn has to ask itself, has to find out, obviously. And the Big 12 has to do some due diligence on its own end and figure out whether or not that makes it worth it. But everything signals to me that Yormark is playing the long game towards that 2031 TV contract negotiation, which I know feels like it's a lifetime away, but it's going to be here before we know it, right? I'll be here doing this show. You'll be hopefully watching, listening, and it's going to be here before we know it. So that's what I took away from Brett Yormark's press conference. But I also, maybe most importantly, feel like this conference is as unified as it maybe has ever been. Certainly since I started following the conference, 10, 15 years ago now. There is a unity that this league has never had. And it goes back to when the Big 12, became the Big 12 25, 30 years ago now. You had all the old Big 8 schools with the Southwest Conference and the butting of heads and who's the alpha dog and all these different things. And eventually that will happen in the Big 12 too. Because teams will start to separate, alphas will start fighting, and that will naturally, organically happen. But for now, it is great to be covering this conference and watching this conference and knowing that it certainly appears like everybody's on the same team. There is no backstabbing. There is not even, a lot of the reporting that would get leaked to people is not happening from this conference. At least in a negative way. There are positive leaks about expansion, but there are no negative leaks where teams are backstabbing each other. And for the first time in, the nearly 10 years we've been doing this, but the 15 years that I've been watching this conference and covering this conference, it is so refreshing because we're just not used to it, right? We're not used to it. And while I think we'd be in this space no matter what, I do also believe that having a guy like Brett Yormark at the top is helping alleviate and prevent any of those potential issues from taking place, at least right now. So I'm fired up about that. I'm excited about that. And I think overall, it is such a good time for this conference and better than I could have ever predicted over the last couple of years. Some of you asking, by the way, about the T-shirt. These we were selling a long time ago, a couple of years back, and then the SEC came after us, so we had to stop, unfortunately. But I still got one, and they can't prevent me from wearing it, right? I don't know. Maybe their hotshot attorneys would try, but they can't prevent me from wearing it, so such is life. It is great to be here with you. I'm Pete Mundo, HeartlandCollegeSports.com. Thanks, as always, for joining us, for being a part of the show. Appreciate you, and appreciate all that you guys do to help this show grow every single day. And before you leave, as always, we've got the stack of koozies. They're right here, Heartland College Sports Koozies. All you got to do is leave a rating and a review on the podcast and hit that subscribe button. And then send me a screenshot to Pete Mundo, MUNDO, at HeartlandCollegeSports.com, and we'll get you all hooked up. So thank you so much for doing that. It'll take you 30 seconds, and it really does help this show grow ahead of football season. It's all because of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Where else are you getting free stuff for subscribing and rating and reviewing podcasts? Come on now. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.